Hello, I'm Chris Schnee, writer and roleplayer. I'm running another session of the tabletop role-playing game Worlds Without Number in a setting called the Chronicles of Aeres. This is a world that's rebuilding after a Mad King's death and a magical disaster. My characters are Emmer, an armored warrior with a friendly disposition, and Lenn, an elemental mage. They are rat people. Specifically, they are former humans who agreed to join up with a colony of heroic rat folk living in the capital city called Taldurius by turning into their kind. It was a witness protection situation that got them away from trouble in their hometown. In game terms, they are level 3 characters on a 1 to 10 scale. In this adventure, I intended to get into some faction-based gameplay, exploring larger-scale conflict in addition to the standard kind. Where I left off last time, they had done a favor for the city-state of Kettlesare, only to see the place burned down in an apparent dragon attack. They investigated and found the raid was really done by an intelligent dragon man, more likely several of them. This particular breed is an evil type aligned with the widespread cult of the Black Rose. Emmer and Lenn tracked the attackers down to a mine in the mountains, where they killed one of the dragon folk and some cultists and evil aligned soldiers. They also rescued enslaved kobolds, looted some of the stolen treasury, and discovered a passage into the vast underworld. Rather than throw themselves into an endless cave system, they went back to town to report. Their reward was to keep most of what they found and to stay a while and help with rebuilding. By the way, they found some magic items last time. I want to avoid handing them permanent stat bonuses, so let's give them each something temporary or gimmicky. The random roll says they found a stutter hatchet. This weapon is a hand axe that undoes any harm it did to inanimate objects, when touched again or at the next dawn. I will choose one other cool thing, a magic shield with no stat bonus but one magic effect. A random roll says it is a vigilant shield, which grants dark vision and prevents the wielder from being surprised. Alright, Emmer now has a slightly magical shield that's also hard to destroy, and a magic hatchet that I'm not sure what he can do with, but he keeps that in his pack. So currently, Emmer is doing what he can with bricklaying and keeping the peace as a guard in Kettlesare. Lenn is using her stone-shaping magic to carve bricks out of the nearest cliff, clear rubble, and dig tunnels. They've been at this for several days. The trouble with their actions is this town is aligned with the basically independent nation of Irulan. Irulan claims to loyally follow the edicts of the last king, specifically the Edict of Steel, which says, kill all wizards and magical races. So being a rat folk in Kettlesare is a dangerous position, especially being a wizard rat, even if you're obviously there to help, as these two are. The two are trying to be careful and friendly so that the people care more about being helped than about who or how. So how astute are Emmer and Lenn about the political situation here? They're peasants and they're not very educated, but they've hung around this town and among the more savvy rat folk. By asking around and having general knowledge, they get a decent idea of what's going on. They know there are 3 main noble families around here, the Total Jerks in Irulan's capital to the north, the Bankers in Emberholm to the east, and the agricultural family here in Kettlesare. The local ruling clan is House Aldebrand, and they were the most tolerant even before Emmer and Lenn made themselves useful. Aldebrand also has the best farmland by far, giving them power even with this main city of theirs badly damaged. The Jerks in Irulan have 2 distinct scary military forces, the Armored Imperators, who they've seen before, and the more elite Witchfinders, who fanatically want ratfolk and wizards dead. Their base of support is that they also kill the more standard kind of monsters, making them somewhat useful. Set the scene, then. The heroes are trying to make themselves useful in Kettlesare. It's a badly damaged town, and they are helping out. While they're doing that, a group of riders and wagons come to town. This is a caravan from Irulan with relief supplies and soldiers. They carry the wolf head banner of House Brownhold, the capital rulers. Emmer and Lenn stay out of sight as this group shows up. It's good news in that another noble house is here to help. Bad news is that Brownhold wants to extend its power and won't appreciate the rats. Emmer says, we may need to leave town quickly. But before they can pack up and go, they're spotted. There's a pair of black-clad inquisitors here. One of them points the heroes out to their commander, a richly dressed young nobleman. The noble on horseback stiffens, and he confronts the agents of House Aldebrand who've come out to meet him. What is the meaning of this? I've designed stats for the Inquisitors. These are called Witchfinders, and they're geared up for killing as individuals, tougher than the guards who've come with them. Their armor is inferior than the Imperators seen before, but they've got a lot of offense ability and a couple of potions. Yeah, NPCs get access to potions too, in a setting where they're reasonably common. What do the local Aldebrand forces do about this? Their leader, the Lady Aldebrand, greets the incoming forces with an insincere smile. She tries to change the subject, saying, we're glad to see you finally arrived. We have made do with whatever resources we can get until now. The nobles talk. Brownhold has the 2 witchfinders, 4 armored Imperator guards, half a dozen masons and other craftsmen with 2 wagons of tools and construction gear. They call for the immediate arrest of Emmer and Lenn. For a minute, it looks like a fight might break out, but Lady Alderbrand calls out, "I'm granting them sanctuary for the duration of their visit, due to the extreme circumstances." The Brownhold noble says, "Well then, we shall help you protect them." The result of this conversation is that the 2 ratfolk are holed up in the badly damaged castle. Lenn has repaired it a bit. Notably, the ruler didn't make it her top priority, so parts of it are still a wreck. There's a stalemate because the Imperators and Witchfinders are devoting a large share of their attention to making sure these 2 can't just walk away from the town. Alderbrand in turn has guards making sure those guys don't try anything. In the castle, Lenn fumes. "They're devoting a lot of manpower to make sure we're both unproductive." Emmer paces equally frustrated. "Can you spring us out of here?" She says, "I've got 2 spells per day, and I've used up 1 today. The stone shaping will be noisy, and I'm sure they'll be prepared for it. Unless you want to try blasting them, my best bet is an illusion spell. We may be better off waiting for tomorrow so I can rest. Would that hatchet help?" Emmer looks at the thing skeptically and says, "I don't think I could chop my way out." They decide to sleep, trusting in Lady Alderbrand's guards for now. They try to set up some tripwires or loose objects around them to detect any intruders in the room they share. For that, they make a craft roll and do a competent job at that. The question is whether there's an attack in the night. I say probably no, and I draw a card for this. I get a yes despite bad odds, with an icon of a siege tower. Because it's political trouble for the Brownhold people to openly arrest people in another noble's home territory, this is either a brazen hostile act or a subtle one. The siege tower suggests that it's pretty blatant. So do they send practically the full force they have? Even odds tells me no, so it's a strong no. And the icon on the card shows a graveyard. The Brownhold people want to avoid heavy casualties, so they're being careful. What happens is, they send the 2 witchfinders that night to approach the door of the castle and flagrantly bully and beat down its guard. "You're harboring fugitives, and we will have them." Does the guard manage to raise an alarm? I give this only even odds. The answer is yes, with an icon of vampire lips on the card. This guard is an alert night owl who shouts and bangs a gong when trouble looms, so he reacts before the witchfinders can silence him. The question then is whether they decide to proceed with their mission. They were already willing to cause major trouble, so I'll give this good odds. No, say the cards, with an icon of someone being hushed. The witchfinders back off before doing serious harm to the guard, cursing and aborting the mission. Inside the castle, Emmer and Lenn wake up to the gong. They scramble upright. Emmer hasn't got all his armor on, but he hurries with shaking hands to get ready for a fight. Lenn helps, but other than that, nothing happens other than a growling wind outside. "False alarm?" asks Lenn. Emmer says, "I don't know," and he seeks out the castle guards. Several of them have been roused too. They all discover the sentry and learn that Brownhold's men have been here trying to force their way in. The lady is awakened and she's angry. The ratfolk get to rest uneasily for the rest of the night. In the morning there's fallout and worse. Intense wind sweeps through the damaged town and rain has started. Lady Alderbrand summons the heroes for what turns out to be a very informal breakfast, not there's a lot of spare food right now. She says, "I want to get you 2 out of here, but I'm also going to humiliate Brownhold." Emmer speaks up. "Will you confront them about the attack then?" "No, they'll deny it, and only my own guard can accuse them." She claps her hands. "So, I've already taken a shocking step by allowing magic use in public in my lands, and the people know you've helped here. I'd like you to be seen very publicly working today to provoke an attack." Lenn worries aloud, "If I use up my magic, I'll be nearly defenseless." Emmer says she's still capable without the actual spells, even so. Lady says, "Right, so this will be mainly Emmer's work, plus whatever casual and flashy use of magic you can spare without weakening yourself, Lenn. My guards will be watching." There's an advisor to the lady here, a sort of quartermaster. He says, "Milady, this could be a major storm." She says, "Be careful, of course. I will be seen in public, too." They all go outside. Emmer is armored and armed. He and Lenn head over to a construction site to try showing off as flagrantly non-human people in territory belonging to Irulan's houses. They've done this already, but they're now doing so under the watchful and irate gaze of the Brownhold people, taunting them. Emmer makes a roll to do some physical labor, and he does very badly. Meanwhile, Lenn tries to show off with magic, performing minor feats to help out without really spending spells. And she does pretty well at that. So Emmer wears himself out, and Lenn tries to cover for him. Even so, they are prominently seen working and not being accosted by the local government. It's a public taunt to the Brownhold people who are nominally in town to help too. What happens now? A random card draw gives me the idea. The Brownhold men tried to delay the ratfolk departure. One of the Witchfinders says, it's valuable to see how their kind operates. Since Lady Aldebaran is claiming them for now, her authority prevails here. Of course, she must agree to strengthen Irulan's presence here to prevent further incursions. They're trying to lean on her politically, saying that she needs to give them more control in return for continued rebuilding aid. Emmer speaks loudly enough for onlookers to hear. Incursions! Sirs, we wish only peace for the good people of Kettlesare. Given the ongoing threats, as you well know, there are monsters more dangerous than a few ratfolk. You're having some trouble controlling your own mining operations, aren't you? Emmer is referencing the recent battles in a mine taken over by monsters and Imperator soldiers. I'm making a convince roll here. Emmer's goal is to sway the public opinion in favor of the Ratavir and to goad the Brownhold people. He rolls pretty well. The nobleman from Brownhold is irritated. He says, People of Kettlesare, there is a better way than resorting to witchcraft. You know how to rebuild through good, clean human effort, and we have come here to help you with it. I don't understand why your leader is engaging in heresy, and we will be discussing it in the capital. As he says that, the light rain and strong wind worsen rapidly. The cloudy sky grows subtly darker. People look up. A major storm is approaching from the south. Lady Aldebaran calls out, Everyone, that's enough work for today. Get to shelter and get dry. She waves her hand and people disperse. Emmer and Lenn follow her back into the castle. Lenn is worrying because she's sitting on 2 potential spells for the day and doesn't want to use either while there's any chance of a fight. The wind howls outside and blows through holes in the damaged walls. The lady's staff are busy guarding the place and securing what furniture might be damaged by the storm, and it gets worse and worse. It's now afternoon under an approaching hurricane. Lady Aldebaran asks Lenn, Is this natural, or some kind of witchery? Lenn says, I don't know of any spell that can do this, or how to stop it. Something ought to happen now that prevents the heroes from simply cowering in a sturdy room for the rest of the adventure. I'm leaving this up to a card draw. I get images of a villain defecting, and of candles setting off a flame in a fragile wooden building. What happens is, there's a terrifying boom of thunder that has Lenn squeaking. It passes, but minutes later there are shouts in the distance, calling for help. They peek outside and see a large wooden building is on fire. Because rain is pouring down, that's likely going to solve itself. Still, there are people in danger. Wait here, says Emmer. He hurries out the door. Lenn reluctantly stays put. Outside, Emmer sees the fire. This is a big wooden hall that was being repaired to shelter people, and it's more flammable than it ought to be, what with tarps and scrap wood for a roof. A bunch of people are trapped inside. Emmer hurries over to the damaged building to help pull people out. Fortunately, it looks like the Witchfinders have not shown up yet. There's a distant bell ringing an alarm. Someone is trying to prop up a large doorway so that it doesn't collapse. And there are orphans here, of course. Emmer's approach is to rush in with agile moves and haul some of the kids outside. This is a dexterity and exert-based roll, and he does very well at that. With a small stature, he is able to dart through the doorway and usher several victims outside, reducing the panicked crowd. Is he willing to take a risk and try it again while the building creaks? Yeah, sure, he's a hero. Roll again. He doesn't do quite as well, but it's another favorable roll. He helps get more people out and stands back to try keeping people calm as they get away. He stands in the pouring rain and intense wind. He leads people over to the castle, where Lady Aldebaran's men take them into a crowded and barely usable shelter. Emmer returns to the room he shares with Lenn. He's singed and wet, but he grins. See, I wasn't gone long. There are some injured people to tend to in the hall. Lenn says, My turn then, and runs off to do some first aid. She is flustered and doesn't do an especially good job, but it's competent enough to be useful. She gets back and uses fire to help dry Emmer's clothes. In the morning, the lady calls for the 2 ratfolk. She says, I'm indebted to you for your help last night and with the rebuilding. My house is in a hard position right now because we're under accusation of working with magic users and beastfolk. The public evidence for that is fairly strong thanks to you. Emmer tries to take this remark well. He says, If you prefer not to have our help... The lady interrupts. There is a saying among the criminal class that it's better to be hanged for stealing a sheep as for a goat. Since my guilt is public, I may as well embrace it. Henceforth, House Aldebaran does not recognize the Edict of Steel. Some of her courtiers look alarmed and drop their silverware. The Edict of Steel is law among all the noble houses of Irulan. Rejecting it means open opposition to several armed neighbors. A mustachioed man rises to say, Lady, you can't be serious. We are in need of help from our sister houses, not any position to antagonize them. Emmer gets a chance to speak, saying, We of Padfoot Alley are eager to offer help to all good people. To accept our aid means breaking the laws of a dead king who no longer rules, but your ruler has wisely seen that there's benefit. He rolls pretty well. The lady raises the glass to that. We will be honored to get your help in rebuilding and protecting our land. No good folk have reason to oppose us, since it's critical that we keep our farms working and our food deliveries rolling. Why, our sister houses could hardly object to any measures that ensure their continued food supply. Padfoot and Taldorius alike surely wish to make sure their spellcasters are welcome to come and go, and profit by so doing. Emmer and Lenn, please tell your allies that we look forward to their support in this critical time. In other words, Alderman is making several political moves. She's being handed an excuse to renounce the region's anti-magic policy. She's telling the other houses of Irulan to stuff it with their criticism, since she controls the food supply and they're dead without her support. She's inviting closer alliance with Taldorius and saying, if you don't help us, we might get attacked by our neighbors, you better help. If you do help, that's a big win for you because you help strengthen a sympathetic government. Pretty good move on Lady Alderbrand's part. Lenn offers to cast another spell today before she leaves. The lady nods and arranges for the two to leave town today before Irulan's people retaliate. She promises an escort. Also, she privately asks for 2 spells today, exhausting Lenn's spell power. And by the way, behind the scenes, Lady Alderbrand's daughter is a notorious magic user living in the capital. Lenn agrees to cast her second spell for the day and use up her spells for the sake of politics, because she's got official legal protection against the Witchfinders. The goal will be to do these spells stealthily so that the Witchfinders don't necessarily know she's drained. As far as the Witchfinders can tell, her direct involvement is limited today, so they have limited intel about how dangerous she is right now. Are they going to make a move? The cards say no. So, the heroes leave town with a lot of damage, both from the storm and the earlier burning. Lenn's spells and Emmer's manual labor have earned them a lot of respect. The ruler has formally announced tolerance of spellcasters and ratfolk in the name of rebuilding. Are there any random encounters on the way back through several days of travel? No. The heroes get back to Padfoot Alley and report on the startling news from the north. Now, I've already shown a list of the factions of Irulan. Player actions override the faction stuff. Here is a revised faction list showing that House Alderbrand has made one of their problems even worse. It's a gamble. The heroes haven't done much net good in terms of rebuilding the town, but they basically negated the additional storm damage there would have been. Now, here's a chart of 2 more factions, the city of Taldorius and the Padfoot Alley group within the city. Padfoot operates at a smaller scale than the rest, and has serious problems. However, Lenn and Emmer have taken substantial pressure off of their home because the nearest part of Irulan now opposes the anti-magic laws. I'm crossing off one problem because it's now less of a threat. Because Emmer is a guard, he reports to Guard Commander Marius Thornroot. It's rumored that he's capable of smiling. He greets the heroes with a polite nod and asks for a briefing. We've received the diplomatic letter. Now let me hear what really happened. He probably hasn't even heard the details of the attack on Kettlesere. On getting the full story, Marius looks conflicted. Well, good work. Emmer says, Is something wrong, sir? Marius tosses him a few coins. No, dismissed. Welcome back. Get yourself a good meal on me. I need to think about this. Marius has a problem. Most of the ratfolk population currently living is either naturally born to the species or were transformed generations ago from humans, or in some cases from natural rats. This whole idea of turning humans into ratfolk using the local alchemy lab is pretty new. Marius is well known to resent it, and to wish the Padfoot Alley could be a pure nation of proper natives unsullied by ex-human wretches. This stance has put him at odds with the de facto leader, who is a friendly veteran who welcomes everyone. But Padfoot has a critical population shortage. There is no nation, no rat kingdom. Bringing in a lot more recruits is necessary if the group is to survive at all, but the culture could become unrecognizable if there's too big an influx. That's right, it's a nativist versus immigrant fight. Marius has mixed feelings about Emmer and Lenn because they're newcomers, but they've proven themselves useful and loyal. Lenn and Emmer have a relaxing dinner to celebrate their victories. They think about their growing importance within Padfoot. The two know that they're welcomed and would like to continue living here. Lenn has a unique chance to shape an underground city with her magic. And given the population problem, well, everybody has been encouraging these two to quit risking their lives and take some time off to help solve that. Besides that project, they've got something else to do. In game terms, they have a resource called Renown, and they're up to 8 points each now. They can use this influence to make big things happen off stage. They would like to arrange for a major change in the situation, recruiting scores of people to join the ratfolk over the next year, roughly doubling the population. This would be a village-scale project costing 2 points, multiplied by 2 for being implausible, a socially tricky thing to pull off, doubled again for causing serious social unrest, both because the ex-humans are suspicious of this weird magical thing, and because the locals in Padfoot Alley are not terribly eager to have a whole lot of people showing up who were humans yesterday. The cost is doubled a third time, because there is trouble working around the leaders in the towns that the people are going to be recruited from. It's going to be done gradually and discreetly enough to avoid getting too much attention from the rulers. The recruits will include people from the hometown of Bureau Crossing and others from Kettleshare. That's a total price of 16 renown, which is every point that Emmer and Lenn currently have, but it means that they would personally be spearheading the solution to Padfoot's precarious size. Do they want to pay that full amount to organize this project and get it done? One option is to cut the cost by personally getting involved in an adventure. Let's have that happen. One day, they're having a conversation with Marius in the meeting room over lunch, talking about recruitment. They've gotten some delicious meat pies made by the local baker rat. Emmer thinks to say, "If this must happen, sir, how can we go about it in a way that doesn't ruin us?" The guard captain says, "Us?" Emmer answers, "I'd like to think of myself as part of the culture by now. I've fought and labored for the alley." Marius eats and thinks, "What I object to is that the recruits you're talking about are trash, lowlifes who know nothing about us but hateful rumors, and who've never shared our struggles. They fear us. You two at least turned out decently, I admit, but you were specifically targeted by the Black Rose cultists, as opposed to being some random murder hobos who thought that growing fur would be a good way to escape justice." Lenn suggests, "What if many of the newcomers had been up against the Rose themselves? We've been wanting to set our hometown free from their control. All of our neighbors have now seen what the cult's influence is like." Marius says, "If you went there, you would be exposing your identity as former humans, wouldn't you?" Emmer says, "We would need to do that to gain their trust. We've grown since we fled from there. So, anyone we gathered from there would be accepting toward the species change, and have a common enemy, and be someone that we personally think is alright." Emmer rolls poorly on a convince roll, but Lenn helps to cover for him. Marius is unhelpful, and he harumphs, but he can't quite say no to and actively oppose the project. He says, "You'd better be careful about all this, you two. You're needed here." Lenn and Emmer have a self-imposed mission. Go back to their hometown, try to drive out the cult, and do it in a way that convinces their neighbors to help them and join up. For this job, they want hirelings. These will be a pair of humans from Taldorius, upstanding fellows from the region's main ethnic group. They're just guards chosen for muscle and keen eyes. Emmer wants to hire trustworthy, competent people, and he has the connect skill, so he's capable of trying to ask around and find people. His role is competent. He's successful enough to find some cheap but weak guards. I rolled up some random character traits for these people. I get one man who is the last survivor of his family, seeking to rebuild, and one with a chronic illness that magic hasn't been able to cure. Both of them seem like possible recruits for the ratfolk at some point. They've come along partly to see Emmer and Lenn in action. Their names are Hal and Pike. From the city, the two rats and two humans set out to the east, toward Bureau Crossing. But they quickly run into a random encounter on the road. I rolled a small group of local inhabitants, raiding their rivals, with a positive reaction. Interesting. My first thought was that this was an immediate encounter between cultists and villagers. But the inhabitants don't have to be people. What happens is, a group of worried townsfolk appear on the road armed. "You there! Have you seen any goblins? We're out hunting them. There's a nest of them somewhere. They've been raiding our farms." And this group of people are from Bureau Crossing, so Lenn and Emmer would recognize some of them. Unfortunately, the main guy they recognize, due to a bad roll, is the biggest jerk in town, a wealthy farmer named Jason. The group as a whole is friendly, but he calls out, "Maybe these rats are behind them." Emmer says, "We're happy to help you kill goblins." "What, turning against your fellow vermin?" Emmer pointedly ignores this jerk and addresses the others. "Where?" "How well have they done so far in tracking the goblins?" A bell curve roll of dice tells me average. "These guys have been hunting all morning and they haven't found a clear trail yet, but there are signs of the nasty critters not too far away." Emmer and Lenn are both competent at wilderness survival, wizard survival too, so they should get to roll for an attempt to help. They're not especially helpful today, though. The hunting party itself works together to try to find these guys, and they roll very well eventually. By late afternoon, they've located a foreboding cave in a swampy woodland. There are even some bones visible on the ground outside. Is this a straightforward dank cave full of monsters? I rolled up some random ruin tags for it to get an idea. I got distant gate and rigid hierarchy. Oh, I know what to do with that. Emmer and Lenn consult the armed townsfolk. Are we going in together then? A morale check for these people is terrible. They were expecting to fight goblins in some dinky nest, not go into a deep cave with obvious foreboding aura like this one. Emmer looks toward a few of the braver people, and he tries to rally them to his side. He has a lead skill. He says, Strength in numbers, and we're experienced fighters. Let's clear this out so your families can sleep well tonight. He does well enough that a pair of the villagers agree to come along into the cave. These are not combat-trained people, but they've got spears and they're willing to help. They start exploring. Emmer breaks out a pair of torches for the villagers. A narrow cave entrance leads through twisting passages to the west. There, Emmer's party finds moldering, ruined goods filched from Birrell and other villages. Something unexpected is here, though. It's not just goblin activity. A human has been here recently, with a man-made sleeping area placed where the goblins haven't disturbed it much. Emmer says, "You two from Birrell, we've heard the Black Rose cult might be operating nearby. This could be their work, sending your monsters your way." He's trying to get these people to talk, but he doesn't press them on that yet. The party moves on. From here, there are 2 more exits. Emmer has that dark vision shield, so he sneaks northward in the dark to investigate. He quickly finds a light source up ahead. Man-made? No, it's that phosphorescent moss that so puzzles biologists in fantasy worlds. Something ahead is snorting, shuffling around, and there's a terrible smell. Emmer is being sneaky and in the dark, and he has skill and sneak, so he isn't immediately seen. He keeps back and whispers a warning. The party has time to gird itself for battle. The 2 spearmen and the 2 hired hands with swords stay just behind Emmer, with Lenn bringing up the rear. They move in quickly to get the first strike. 4 obviously monstrous green-screen critters with crude spears are there. Where goblins gather, there might be a tougher leader, but he's not there right now. Emmer cleaves the head off one of the 4. There's not enough room for everyone to attack, but the spearmen act as a unit for a swarm attack that fails miserably and gets in the other guy's way. The goblins hiss and growl in alarm, rushing in to kill the intruders. A spear clatters uselessly against Emmer's armor and another on his shield, but a third jab hits the sickly swordsman for minor damage. Emmer lands a glancing blow, which is just enough to knock out a second goblin. Lenn lets loose a fire blast, but is too focused on not hitting teammates to hit anyone else. Instead, she ruins a perfectly good stalactite that took 10,000 years to form. Great job, Lenn. The spearmen stab another target, and the injured swordsman wins the last one. It slashes him across the arm before he finishes it off by himself. 4 goblins lay dead in seconds. Lenn comes forward to tend to the man's wounds while the party searches this glowing mossy area. The goblins had some shiny things, some figurines depicting the Amordran, the gods of this land. There's a petty enchantment on them that makes them glow. One of the villagers says, "These got looted from our temple." The party proceeds to the passage they skipped. Emmer scouts. The path branches ahead. They hear the sound of water. There's an underground stream filling much of the room. 6 goblins lurk here along with a big bruiser, an ogre-like guy. Because of how many there are, Emmer has to make a sneak check. He's careful, but his boot knocks a pebble aside and draws the goblins' attention. Emmer recalls that the ratfolk are pretty much universally against wearing footwear for this reason. The reaction roll is average, and they're dumb, evil monsters. So, roll for initiative. The goblins react quickly, boiling down the passageway. This is kind of helpful because no more than, say, 3 can attack at once. They tag team Emmer as a swarm attack and hit him for maximum damage. They slam him backward with half his health gone. He slashes wildly, cutting one goblin deeply across his chest. The 2 swordsmen try to help, and though they get in each other's way, one of them lightly injures the second beast. The quick-thinking villagers grab Lenn and hoist her up for a clear view to fireball the horde. It's just enough to fry the third. So now the hallway contains a wounded Emmer, flanked by 2 human swordsmen, facing 2 dead goblins and an injured one. 2 more of the critters jump on the bodies to enter the fight, while the frustrated ogre is about to swat them away and join in. These 3 front-line goblins in the front go after Emmer and the swordsman, 1 each. They only manage to scratch up 1 swordsman, the last survivor guy. Lenn casts a spell now that she's got a moment to think. She targets the space down the hallway with the spell Wind of the Final Repose, which drops the other 4 goblins into sleep. The big ogre gets a save, which fails. He topples, crushing 1 regular goblin with his bulk and making everyone else hop out of the way. Suddenly, it's quiet in here. One of the villagers sets Lenn down and says, "Why didn't you do that first?" Lenn says, "Mystic preparation." So now, Lenn patches people up. This isn't a safe place to rest at all, so they back off to the already cleared area for that. Nothing attacks while they do that. Water blocks the way to the north. Nobody's eager to swim in the dark, and while Lenn does know a spell for that, it's not prepared today and she has no reason to use it right now. So a somewhat limping Emmer scouts over to the southwest. Water pools in this part of the cave too. The new room is slightly higher and is spilling down into the previous pond. Looks like there's something in the water, Emmer reports. The group advances, but decides not to go fishing yet. Emmer checks to the west. More glowing moss here, but not much else. North, he finds a rope-triggered spike trap that's already broken, put here by someone other than the goblins that are in the room. Just 1 goblin, apparently. Emmer gets a bit reckless and rushes it by surprise, easily running it through. He comes back to gather people. He peeks into a wide, deep, dead-end chamber, and here the real secret of the place is revealed. It's a cult lair. This is a base they've been using in the wilderness, apparently with goblin minions. A banner of the Black Rose hangs on the wall. At the far end of the room is a black stone mirror. When told about this, Lenn is the one to whisper, "Those are magic transport devices." Next question. How many members of the cult are currently here? It's a base of theirs, so I think several are here at any one time, including low-level minions and possibly a proper sorcerer. What does Emmer see in the dark? Looks like a pretty small threat, only a lone cultist in residence right now. The plan is to split up and have the spearmen guard the south while the swordsmen wait in the east. Emmer, taking advantage of the darkness, creeps in while holding Lenn's hand. Their stealth is successful. They find the lone cultist eating. Lenn blasts him with lightning, making the cave flash blue as the man drops. Lenn runs over to her victim and tries to slap him awake, but his heart just stopped. Emmer keeps watch with the sword, looking around for more trouble. With difficulty, Lenn manages to stabilize the cultist, who is frail and helpless. Emmer threatens him, saying, "Where are the rest of you?" He successfully intimidates the man. "Rats? Rats got all the way in here?" "Yeah, we're sneaky. Now, where are the Black Rose members in Bureau Crossing? Talk." The man talks with only a little more roughing up. He tells of an underground lair beneath the town and adds, "It's no use to you. There's worse than goblins down there, and you'll never survive." Lenn and Emmer march the cultist south as a prisoner. They rejoin the group and have Emmer look into the neglected western area. Noxious fumes taint this area, which is full of bones and filth. This is probably leftovers from the goblins' kills. Emmer notices the stench in time before he can be harmed by it. He backs off to breathe, then hurries onward with his nose covered and holding his breath. He finds a room with some personal belongings of several cultists, stashed here for extra safety, but no major value. He rummages through them and comes back with something interesting. There's a pale blue potion to bring back for Lenn's analysis later. The party tries to fish out whatever's in that pond. There's a group with spears and some teamwork to get this done, so they manage it. What's in there? Oddly, it's a musical instrument, a brass flute that looks finely made. The group also loots whatever's in the cult's main chamber. There's got to be something valuable here. While they're looting, Emmer looks at the mirror again. He says, I think this thing might be evil." Lenn studies it intently for 2 seconds and says, "My keen magical senses agree. I don't want to take the risk of something horrible coming through here." Lenn determines how best to smash the thing, and Emmer shatters key pieces of the frame and then the main plate itself. Blue smoke coils away from the thing as the shattering noise echoes through the cave. What else do they find in here? A minor cult hideout. There should be significant treasure, but nothing huge. What I roll that they uncover is a cache of uncut topaz stones, kept either as a magic component or for trade. Doesn't matter now. At last, the victorious party walks outside and into an ambush. The cult does have a base of operations in Bureau, after all. They had to hurry, but they knew that if they rushed and used some kind of message spell, they could get some armed cultists in place to counterattack the group that was poking its head into the goblin den. They can't be the full cult here. They're not totally prepared. They had to arrange this ambush in a hurry. But it's enough of a force so they think it's a threat to 2 puny ratfolk and weakling villagers. They got a spellcaster along with 3 petty mages. So a party of 4 villains. As the ratfolk and their allies step out, not expecting trouble, they see towering hooded figures in the twilight. Their obvious leader says,
"You have defiled a sacred site of our order. Villagers, you have been warned not to interfere in our activities. Turn on these rodents immediately and seize them, and perhaps we will show mercy."
Emmer shouts, "They'll just kill your families if you let them. Come on, men, fight!" The villagers aren't convinced, though. They must make a morale check, and they do pass, but they're frozen with indecision. The cult wizard begins casting a spell. Emmer wants none of that. He's a warrior. His dagger is stowed in his pack, unfortunately, but he whips out that flute he found right at the leader's head. And he actually hits. He beans the man with a thrown flute, shouting, "You're nothing but treble!" It barely harms more than the leader's dignity, but it disrupts his spellcasting. Lenn tries to cast a second sleep spell. One of the cultists thinks quickly and throws a dagger at her. It's a lucky throw. And that actually hits. Emmer tries to shield her from the impact, but he's off balance from the throw. The knife whirls and strikes Lenn in the shoulder. Her robe seems to soak up some violet poison from the blade without it going into her. Her spell, too, is disrupted. The 2 human swordsmen spring into action against the nearest cultist. One knocks the man off balance, and the other gives him a solid slash. The peasants are too frightened to act this round. The other cultists lash out with a fire blast and another poisoned dagger against the swordsman, but only the fire connects, wounding one. The cult leader is outraged.
A brazen insult. Now fall!
He begins casting again. Emmer chucks a rock at his nose. Again the spell fizzles. I cast Broken Nose! Lenn resorts to using bolts of lightning and fire, out of main spells for the day. The leader carries a lantern that glows with sickly green fire, weakening her control. Even so, she zaps one of the henchmen. The peasants make an instinct check. One is still frozen with fear, but the other springs forward to lunge at the nearest cultist. He gets in a lucky hit and takes down the one just targeted by Lenn. The swordsmen take down their target together. That leaves one more cultist standing, plus the barely harmed leader who's got to be out of real spells too. Your stupid face is beaten, says Emmer, who's run out of puns for the day. Both villains pass a morale check. They're angry and foolishly overconfident. The leader brandishes his evil lamp and shoots unholy fire at Lenn. Emmer raises his shield to intercept. He barely gets in the way and the flame cascades off his enchanted shield. The other cultist rushes him with his dagger, but it gets only a hot shield. Emmer counterattacks, leaving his target barely standing. Lenn strikes with ice against the leader, leaving him reeling and stiff. The swordsmen finish off the minions. Now everyone is advancing on the leader, and they don't notice that their prisoner has run away. The leader passes another morale check. He's a fanatic. He backs away while saying,
"The next one to approach me shall die."
He aims a fire blast at one spearman and manages to miss even him. Emmer gestures to Lenn, who dives for cover. In a coordinated move, he charges forward without her, yelling, "Down with the Black Rose!" This is a charge attack with a bonus, and he combines it with a shield bash, and he rolls a 1. Emmer trips and stumbles, rolling to a stop at the leader's feet. Lenn wasn't counting on that. She pops up from the ground to fling ice at the man. Just as the cult leader is about to stab downward at Emmer, he's blasted with magic frost and topples to crash beside the rat. Did the leader have anything valuable on him? That evil lantern gets taken intact to be studied and then probably destroyed. He wasn't fully equipped, so I rolled based on a weak foe for treasure, but I rolled high, 500 silver worth. Call it 10 gold pieces. So, the party has just taken down a significant cult leader and 3 henchmen. However, the one from the cave escaped, probably fleeing to Biril to report the 2 ratfolk are very dangerous and to talk about how they operate. Lenn and Emmer decide to return to Kettlesare. They need to rest and recover rather than rushing into another fight. Lenn dusts herself off and lectures, "As you can see, disrupting spells is not that hard when an evil wizard is after you. I recommend getting a brave husband with a shield." Emmer grins. "You 4 are welcome to come back with us to Taldorius for safety, to avoid getting any trouble with the cult. We can put you up in the inn there." One of the swordsmen says, "Or into the alley. That's what you're really after, isn't it?" At that point, Emmer and Lenn openly explain to the 2 villagers about the ratfolk recruitment program. They introduce themselves as having been from Biril themselves and fleeing because of the same blasted cult. Emmer says, "It's been strange, all right, but we've done well since then. You would be very welcome there." They roll extremely well to convince. They walk toward the city, talking along the way about their past lives as humans and how much has changed for them. They didn't know each other well, but it's a fun conversation, and under the circumstances, very persuasive. Padfoot Alley now has 2 more likely recruits. They'll have to think about it, and meet with the ratfolk leaders for approval, but they've already proven themselves. As the 2 swordsmen, they were interested already, and they've been brave and competent. Emmer and Lenn never made it to their home village on this trip. They still did valuable service, though, and they made progress toward their goals of getting more recruits and wresting their hometown out of the cult's control at last. They make it back to the famous Bubble and Squeak Tavern, just above Padfoot Alley. There they get greeted by barmaid Mina.
"So, you 2 look like you've been busy. 4 human customers with you."
Emmer tells her, "I think we all need a drink before we start talking." The tavern holds a very secure door to the alley, one of the few entrances to the place. It doesn't get very many non-rat customers. After all, what would the health inspector say if he found humans in the kitchen? So there's some unease about this, but Mina tries to make all the newcomers welcome, and they're able to talk about fighting the Black Rose that all good people oppose. Emmer sends word downstairs that he's available to report to Marius about what happened. Emmer and Lenn have a well-earned, relaxing dinner. Their loot includes a slightly used brass flute, seems non-magical, a blue potion, which Lenn later identifies as a draught of omen visions, granting the drinker a bit of future sight, 500 silver worth of uncut gems, 500 worth of gold coins, lunch money that they beat out of the 4 petty cultists, including their weapons. The heroes donate the value of all this stuff toward the village spearmen. Emmer and Lenn also give 500 silver to the borrowed swordsmen as their share, plus 100 more to the villagers, which will fund their expenses for a few weeks. That leaves a total of 400 and a flute for the heroes plus the potion. Emmer and Lenn have been through several dangerous adventures since level 3. They've earned their way to experience level 4. They also earn another 2 renown each. So, that was several short missions for the duo, advancing their goal of protecting and improving their new home and liberating their hometown. If they can successfully raid Beryl Crossing and drive out the cult, that would justify cutting the renown cost of their project in half. For now, the two take a break and prepare for the job ahead. That's it for the session. Again, this was done using the Worlds Without Number rule system, along with other gaming tools including Sean Tompkins' Ironsworn and Larcenist Design's Game Master's Apprentice. The setting is the Chronicles of Aeres by Dueling Dragon Adventures. By the way, even though my own adventures here have focused on the ratfolk, they are not the focus of the overall setting. They're obviously an author favorite, and they have their own book, but the main rulebook for Aeres overtly says that adventure parties should generally be human-centric, or include elves. Aeres is high fantasy that's originally written for D&D, and the author is looking at writing a follow-up for, of all things, old-school AD&D. The exact rules I've been using are my own adaptation. You might also be interested in the upcoming game Titans of Fallen Earth by the same author, which is a kaiju versus mecha game. I haven't seen the rules for it yet, but I've funded it on Kickstarter, and I'm looking forward to that. This has been a gaming session by Ch.2. Check out my books here, and I'll see you next time.